I genuinely didn't think this would end up with a detailed itinerary of your plans.
I'm going to when you get back in.
Oh, well, I'm not going out in the first. I'm staying in all night.
Welcome to episode 21 of the First4LCFC Podcast, where we have something a little different for you this episode, as once again, we're going to be looking at all the big Leicester City talking points. But on this occasion, nearly all of them are suggested by our listeners, and we've certainly had some crackers. Joining me to try and tackle them are both Christian Mosen and Edmund Noon. How are you both?
Edmund.
Good, traditional Dutch name.
Very good.
I'm good, thank you.
Very glad to have you with me. Right, so as there's been no game this week and there was a few games called off, so there's not really a huge amount to go on. We asked our listeners to suggest some questions on social media, and frankly, we've been inundated. So thank you to absolutely everyone that sent them in. We will definitely try and get through as many of them as we can. Now, starting with probably the most current question, which came in from Richard Enriquez, which is about players that we are currently looking at bringing in, and in particular one, Adam LALLANA, who Leicester have been linked with this week. Richard wanted to know if we think LALLANA is a good fit for Leicester, and I think you two may have conflicting views on this one, I guess. So, Chris, what do you reckon?
Well, I don't know if we're going to have... Are we going to have conflicting views? I'm not sure what you think I'm going to say. I'm going to say that it'd be an underwhelming signing, but with one eye on the Champions League, that's the only thing that's sort of swaying me back in, because it's about squad depth, isn't it? Like, I don't see Adam LALLANA getting his starting for Leicester City. Obviously, midfield's an area we've got sort of a plethora of choices, and with him being a fringe player at Liverpool, obviously coming back from injury, I think it'd be a good option to have, but it's certainly not sort of exciting me as a prospect. Let's put it that way.
No, I definitely thought that you might be more on the negative side, but I don't know why. But something was telling me that Ed might be pro this signing. I don't know if I was right, Ed.
Yeah, I'd have him. Obviously at the right price, and he's wage wise, and if he's willing to perhaps not be starting every game, but at the end of the day, he's better than a lot of the midfielders in the current squad, and therefore is a good signing.
Well, it's an interesting one, because he's 31, and if we're going to use Ed's barometer of age as good as footballers are, do we move for a 31-year-old? And what price do you put on a 31-year-old, Ed? Just as out of interest for you.
Well, it'd be a free transfer, wouldn't he? I'd also say, I don't know, Johnny Evans. How old was he when we signed him? And he's been a fantastic. I just think, does he improve? It's as simple as that, really. Does he improve the squad? Yes, that box is ticked. Is he willing to come at a fair price? And is he willing to play a role that maybe he only starts, 15 Prem games, something like that? If he's happy to take that, I think, 2-year deal would be a good bit of business.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because predominantly he's a centre mid who can do a job a bit further out wide. So, where would we see him sort of fitting in if he is to start? 15 games. That's a generous amount of Premier League football, or would we see him more as a European / domestic cup player?
I don't know. Let's assume we do get into the Champions League, then you'd be like to think it's definitely at least another 6 games. You'd like to think maybe it could be up to games. Add a cup run, which we know you love. That could be another 10 games across them. So we may have 60 games next season. You can't have Tielemans and Pratt and Maddison and Ndidi playing 60 games. So saying, you know what, you can feature in 30 of them, I don't think that's at least 30. I don't think that's a ludicrous suggestion. Yeah, I think it's whether he'd be willing to do that, to be honest, because I imagine his desire to leave Liverpool is because he wants to play regular first team football. And even if Leicester are in the Champions League, will he want to move from being a rotation option and a good backup at a record-breaking Liverpool side to being a rotation option and good backup at a Leicester side?
I think Liverpool are almost at a crossroads. They're going to have such an overwhelmingly good season. It could almost work against them. This might be a ludicrous thing for me to say, but players might think, look, I've done everything I can do at Liverpool now. I want a new challenge. Like, I don't know, it might be a bit of a sort of negative, sort of weird mentality to have, but like, essentially, are they ever going to have a better season of football in their life? Like, what's going to be motivating them, if you can sort of see it from my point of view? So whether or not that inspires these sort of fringe players more and might demotivate the proper elite players like Mane, Salah, Firmino, it's hard to say, but I do think there'll be certain players who think, you know, maybe it's my time to move on from Liverpool now. I've done everything I can do, which they literally would have done.
I mean, I was going to ask the question about whether you think that the experience is one of the most important things, because we know that we've got such a young squad and that we're likely going to be looking at a lot of players younger than LALLANA, which we'll talk about in a moment. But having that experience, I mean, you've seen the influence that Johnny Evans has had on the squad in particular. I mean, I think his tutelage has been quite important with the likes of Soyuncu. Do you think that having that balance between the young, the more enthusiastic players and the older and wiser heads would be quite important, especially with the pressure of a Champions League campaign, should we make it?
I think obviously, if you look at it like that, it's obviously good to have a balance of youth and experience, especially, you know, Champions League winner. To be fair, like, he's sort of persuading me. Maybe I've gone a bit soft as the season's gone on, but yeah, it probably is a good thing, because even if we pick up, say, Champions League players or Champions League talent from, you know, maybe lesser leagues such as the Belgian league where Ndidi came from, but maybe, with them being a bit older, like, you know, I'm going to throw a name in there which might not be beyond the realms of possibility because he's absolutely bombing it in Belgium, but why not bring someone like Vincent Kompany back to the Premier League? Literally 1 season contract. He's a big personality. Whether or not he'd want to, whether or not he is actually fit enough to anymore. But, you know, there's worse signings to be bringing back with that Champions League experience and Premier League experience, of course.
Very true. So the jury's very much out on it. I think it's probably one of those where, yeah, if he comes in, you could definitely see the positives, but it's not the one that you go out and look for from the word go. That's probably the fairest way of looking at it. One of the other players at Leicester have been linked with, amongst a host of other clubs, it has to be said, is BENRAHMA from Brentford. A very exciting Algerian winger, which of course we've heard before with mixed success in Mahrez and Gazal. What do you reckon about this signing? Is that a little bit more exciting than the LALLANA link?
Well, I want you to tell us about him after you've watched him a few times, haven't you?
After my in-depth scouting.
Yes, famous Jamie on Joe. What did you see when you saw Brentford play?
Exactly what literally every fan who interviewed outside the ground had warned us he was all about. He's extremely skillful, almost to the point when a few opposition fans have accused him of being disrespectful. I don't know if you saw the clips of him doing the rainbow flick against Bristol, but he just does take the piss sometimes. But he's an extremely tricky winger, wants to be running at players, wants the ball at his feet. I think he's been one of the key players for them in that front three. He's probably the one that they would be most upset about if they lost, is the impression I was given. But he's 24. He's got 13 odd goal contributions this season. It's whether he can make that jump up is the question, because the difference between...
I don't doubt that he's going to be a Premier League player next season for a second. But
do you think his skill set lends it to it?
Yeah, but I think it's whether or not Brentford come up, because the Championship is looking very exciting at the top. I mean, Leeds are doing the classic bottle job, but they're still second, I think, which is mental. But no, like in Brentford, they're up there. So if he comes up with them, he ain't going anywhere, I don't think. But he's been linked with a host of Premier League clubs. I think the biggest club, if you like, who've been linked with him are Arsenal. Well, to be fair, it'd be a good signing for them. He'd be a very good signing for most teams away from Man City and Liverpool for me. So Yeah, take him in a heartbeat and probably really chuck down a lot of money on him. Well, a lot. I'd say, between 30 and 35 million, which is a lot for a championship player. But, I think he's definitely worth it.
Whether you believe the Sun or not, it says that we're apparently in the mix with Newcastle. Villa were interested in the summer. And as you say, Arsenal have entered the race. And that was according to the Telegraph. But they're saying that he would only be available for 15 million.
Fair enough.
Which definitely makes it more of a punt worth doing in my mind. And he's a sort of player which you want to see as sign. Everyone's been crying out for us to have an attacking winger. So it strikes us that is the sort of player we should be looking at. But anyway, listen, you mentioned squad depth earlier, and of course we're talking about players that we should be bringing in. But it leads us into a question that we've had in from Mark, and this one's for you, Ed, straight off the bat. But should we qualify for the Champions League, which is looking likely? Mark asks, are we going to have a similar problem to the last time we prepared for the competition, in that having to buy a lot of players in one window to cope with all the added fixtures? Because it's fair to say that we didn't buy well that season. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think we will have to invest in more bodies in, but as the question suggested, we just need to do it. Easier said than done, sure. We just need to do it right this time. Like last time, what was it? Within like 2 years, everyone we'd bought and sold already, or at least loaned out. It was a disaster, really. Like we didn't get the right players in. It was an opportunity. Not to say we've not kicked on, because obviously we're back in with a shot at getting into the Champions League, but that was an opportunity to sort of solidify us as in and around the top four area, and we sort of went back to where we were before. We all remember what happened that season. Yeah, we had a great run in the Champions League, but other than that, it was a bit naff. So we just need to. I think one of the issues was we didn't really buy players that fit the system. We just sort of invested in. I don't know. Do we even have? Can you name the players we got then?
Well, we signed 8 players, including in January.
Is that when Slimani?
That was Slimani was the headline along with Musa, who I know Chris Ed's
bring him back
after last week. Bring him back, lads. So I mean, alongside him, Ndidi and Mendy were both signed. Who, I mean, Ndidi's obviously worked out to be a fantastic signing.
Was
Mendy
in January, wasn't he?
Yeah, something about throughout the year. And we had Kapuchka, Ron Robert Zieler, who was an unmitigated disaster. Luis Hernandez, who was terrible. And Moller Wag came in January and played about 15 minutes before he broke his arm or dislocated his shoulder or whatever he did. So basically, yeah, like you said, the question is, do we need to avoid that, or are we going to see another repeat of that number of players?
I wouldn't be surprised if we got that number in again. Like, maybe, yeah, I think we probably will add like 5 players to the squad, and maybe a couple of them will be just players to add more depth. You know, we might ship out some players such as, I don't know, James and Amati and whoever else just isn't going to play, and we fill them with actual members of the squad who are going to push for a first team role. And I think it doesn't even need to. Obviously, we probably should be aiming to get 1-2 in who will immediately add and strengthen to the first 11. But when we say if we want 5, it doesn't have to be like half the first team gone. I do just feel like we need a little bit more strength in depth. So we saw what happened when Ndidi got injured.
So in your mind then, guys, like where in the squad do you think, there we've got enough quality in the first team, definitely, for Champions League football? Where do you think is where we just need the depth?
Well, I think central midfield sort of where, if there's like a heat map of squad depth, then it's bright red there, isn't it, for me? I think it's Champions League. It's a step up. You need that quality. You need that sort of magic man who can create something out of nothing, like a Depay type, we've spoke about him before, but you can beat a man, he can take it to the byline. Like if we go into the Champions League, which we will be going is seeded pot 4, we're going to have a much tougher draw than we did last time, unless there's a really favourable draw. And if we go away to places like Real Madrid or Barcelona, I think we just need a bit more magic in the team.
So the creative side, a game changer, someone that isn't necessarily defensive minded as well, because most of our players have that attribute, don't they?
Yeah, I think I can't cite an exact sort of situation, but thinking about Premier League moments like when we played Chelsea at home and Mahrez just absolutely did Chelsea and basically single-handed just like that. I don't see any magic. Like when you play someone like Barcelona, you're gonna have like 2 or 3 chances, and now we haven't got Moose who scored twice against them. I just don't see us scoring against these sorts of teams.
Yeah, which means been proven, and I don't think that they have done so against the big teams necessarily.
And I think it's worrying that we didn't really even look like recruiting in January, because if we got a good, I know obviously there's like a January premium and stuff, but we've left it all to the summer now. So I think we are making the task a little bit more difficult for ourselves. I do think there's obviously stuff going on behind the scenes, but I think the major downfall of why the season after our championship winning season was a disaster was basically because of the pre-season we had. Like we weren't used to doing like the whole the glamour tour sort of thing, and we didn't really have a proper pre-season, to be fair. I'm not sure if it's going to be any more high profile if we come in the top 4, if we get invited to some sort of like Audi Cup in Germany or something, but like travelling around the world playing a handful of games didn't leave us in good stead for that season. That's where I lay a lot of the downfall for that. Yes,
and of course we lost Kante in the summer and didn't really replace him with Mendy, which I think is one of the biggest things. I mean, you partially answered a question that we've had in from David Hansford, who wanted a bit of player discussion about which players we should be looking at giving increased contracts and which players should be moved on. So you mentioned about Matty James and Daniel Amati being sold. Is there anyone because it's likely that in order to fund this, we're going to have to move a couple of players on, and it'll probably be with heavy hearts to do so, because there'll be a couple of players in the mix who are pretty much considered, almost as legends at the club, which is a question we're going to get onto. But who do you think is going to be sold, Ed, if anyone?
Who's going to be sold? Sold and or released.
I don't think there are many contracts up for expiry other than Wes Morgan.
Right. Well, I'd give him another year, but that's another. I think basically everyone now needs to go, other than Benkovic. So Slimani, Silva, Diabate, Gazelle, King, Matty James, Daniel Amati. See, these are a lot of names. Jakupovic.
God, yeah.
I'd honestly look at selling Kasper Schmeichel.
Oh, yeah.
This guy.
Just looking for nibbles, or do you mean it?
Well, no, like we discussed it last week. It shouldn't It depends in what direction you want the style of play to be going. Ultimately, if we are going to be this team who plays out from the back, you need a keeper who can do that, and you probably need a top 4 quality keeper in terms of shot stopping, not one who's literally bottom of the stats table. I've got nothing personal against him, but I think if I detach my emotions of being less City fan and being nostalgic and sentimental towards him, quality-wise, is he a top 4 goalkeeper? Is he in the top 4 goalkeepers in the Premier League right now?
I think when he's on his game and when he's on form, he's in that mix. He's in consideration for it. I think when he's playing at his best.
Well, yeah, but I mean, as a goalkeeper, you can single-handedly cost your team, 10 points a season.
True. So,
again, it's not a witch hunt. Like, I'm not going to be disappointed if he stays. Don't get me wrong. I'm not literally like a huge disclaimer here. I'm not actively asking for him to be sold, but it's just a debate point. All the players we've mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if they went. They're squad players, but in terms of players who could potentially ruffle a few feathers, Kasper Schmeichel, I think it's always a risk recruiting a new keeper in. You don't know what you're going to get. You've seen it go wrong in terms of like Kepa at Chelsea. But keepers don't have to be the youngest. But I just don't think he's never lived up to the expectations that his dad set at Man United. And like Amar said as a guest last week, is there a massive part of us that thinks he's Peter Schmeichel's son? He's therefore a certain standard of goalkeeper, because he does make a lot of mistakes. He doesn't, well, not mistakes like dropping the ball in the back of the net, but in terms of coming and fetching the ball from set piece and things like that, I think it is fine margins as a goalkeeper, and I do think he's in the spotlight. And if anything, I think he actually gets quite an easy ride. I don't think he gets quite as much criticism as he potentially would if we were further down the table.
I mean, there's some sections of fans that refuse to criticise him altogether. And I know that we came in for a little bit of criticism ourselves for daring to do so in last week's pod. But I think that when it's deserved, no one is infallible and everyone needs it looking at. It's just a case of Schmeichel, whether it's form or, whether he is losing his class. I'm leaning towards the former, and I do think that it is a dip in form, and that hopefully we can see him back to his best. But as you say, with some of the stats, they've been going all season, haven't they? So it's where you land on that. But
like you say, I don't think we will internally recruit for a goalkeeper, but there's a lot of good goalkeepers out there, I'm sure, in European football, and a lot younger. And again, I've drawn upon like Champions League experience. I don't know, if you want to make the debate interesting, I'd put him in the spotlight, because Matty James and Dan Amartey, they're not surprising me if they're leaving, but maybe the question should be, go and try and name me another starting player who you could potentially see, who you might want to see sold then, not that you think could get sold like Maddison. Do you think any other player we could potentially move on?
No, not for me.
There you go.
Definitely not. I think that the starting 11 is the strongest it's ever been, and I do think a lot of them rank very highly in terms of relative to other teams in the league too. So I wouldn't want to.
No, you're right. And if you're going to really force me to come up with an answer, which you're not, I'll just keep debating it with myself. Is your players? I'm not saying it at all. Like if I was Dean Henderson at Sheffield United, I won't leave there because they're doing fantastic. But there's players of that ilk who are exciting.
He's a Man U player, by the way. I doubt they'd want to sell to us. He was on loan last season as well. Yeah, he's a Man U.
You're right. I genuinely had no idea that was.
I don't think he's ever played for them, or if he has.
No, you're right. He spent the last.
He was on loan last year.
5 years on loan.
They did well in the Championship, and then they got him back, and yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. You could easily see him potentially joining back up with them, but not if Sheffield United qualify for Europe. He's had a good season. I can only think of that one mistake.
Step down to Man U and leave Sheffield United, would you?
Here's a hypothetical for you both then. Say Nick Pope becomes available. Just not becomes available, but he's attainable for us, which isn't that much of a jump up. I think it's whether a bigger team comes in for him, which is a debate that I'll let you guys have another day. But say theoretically we are given that chance, do you take him over Schmeichel?
I just don't know if he's much of a ball-playing goalkeeper. Like, I don't think he gets to showcase that, but modern debate to have, but I think if Brendan was to make such a plunge, he'll be looking at a goalkeeper who can, shift the ball with his feet. Edison's setting the bar high, but essentially it's a proper sweeper keeper who's going to literally play 50-yard Hollywood balls and be incisive into the opposition's half.
Well, yeah, I mean, personally, I can't see him leaving us at all. At least for another couple of years at the earliest. I think he'll be here for. If he was going to leave, he'd have done so soon after the title-winning season. But I think he's a loyal man, or it might have been that no one came in for him. Who knows? But he's definitely given that sort of respect. Now, I suppose that links us into a question which we put out on Twitter, which has had an amazing amount of feedback into it, which came in from the Twitter account Keeping It LCFC, who said, which players genuinely deserve the legend tag? And that's regardless of the 5,000 to 1 or because they once tweeted you back. So, good question.
Tweeted by a Leicester City player.
James Maddison once. He tweeted me with that terrible gag about Soyuncu.
There he is. Modest.
So he's straight in there, legend status, obviously. So Ed, go on. You can answer this one. Which players currently I don't know whether he means currently.
Well, yeah, that's overall. What we spoke about off air, didn't we? That I posited that actually, if it wasn't for the 5,000 to 1 season, would any of our players be considered legends? Even the likes of Vardy and Schmeichel and add Morgan to that list, like, would they? Like, they, in recent times, sure, like, they've helped us fire us to the Premier League, and Vardy's got a lot of goals, but relatively short period of time, and if it wasn't for that the winning season, they wouldn't really have won anything other than the championship.
But I guess the point is, though, that they have.
Well, yeah, that was just my critique to the question, but obviously we can't really blow that off. So yeah, Vardy is a club legend, as is Kasper Schmeichel, and I think Wes Morgan is as well.
I know what you mean though, because they haven't technically, it's almost a bit of a weird thing to say, but without that, they haven't technically achieved anything. But we have seen a huge increase in our club's stature. So do you give the player, and as a result of the title win, so do you credit the players that were key in that, and do they get legend status?
Well, I'm coming at it from a bit of a different angle. I've got up in front of me the all-time appearances record stats, and a lot of them are obviously players I've never heard of. Like Graham Cross is actually the all-time
player.
City appearance holder was 600. But then in terms of current players, you've got Andy King, who's 10th, Kasper Schmeichel, who's 14th. So just them two. But for me, that's still not enough. Like, do you become a legend because you played a certain amount of games for the club? I mean, it's certainly a contributing factor, and I'm not dismissing it. But Andy King, he's always been there, and he's been through the hard times. He's got 3 different league winning medals, which is not many players. That's quite a unique sort of thing, I guess. But he's sort of, I don't know, like, legend for me is someone like who you can imagine there being like a statue of, and people speak about in like 30 years time, like, oh, I remember, like, Jamie Vardy will be spoken about. And yeah, that goes off into a tangent of whether that's just because of the championship winning season, but Andy King won't be talked about in 30 years time. Kasper Schmeichel, again, not sure. You like Gordon Banks gets mentioned now, but that's again for different reasons. He was part of the World Cup winning team, stuff like that. Peter Shilton, big players. For me, I want to come at it from a different angle. I'm looking and focusing around the millennium period, where Leicester City won the League Cup that sort of era, and they won it twice, didn't they? Was it a couple of years previous? That was it, like 96 or something, when it was a Coca-Cola Cup.
97.
Yeah. So, and a player who featured in both those teams was Steve Walsh. So for me, purely because, let's not forget, he spent 14 years at the club between 1986 and 2000. He's still involved with the club now in certain capacities. He's got 2 League Cup medals. They're not as great as Premier League, but it's a trophy that back then was important in English football. You didn't see players rested or whatever. Yeah, squad depth wasn't as great, but for me, that's what a club legend is. He is still spoken about in this day and age. He was a sort of unique, a bit of a maverick. He could play up front when we needed to. Stuff you don't see. He was a character. So for me, from various points in terms of stuff he's won, length of time at the club, character, Steve Walsh for me is a Leicester City legend. That's who I'm putting forward.
So basically, you're saying that. I completely agree with you. He certainly is, and I think because of the way that he quite literally lived and breathed Leicester, he was Mr. Leicester City at the time, and he probably still is in many people's minds. That does categorise him as a legend. I think the only thing I disagree with you on is about Andy King, especially as he's one of the only players he is the only player to ever win League One, Championship and Premier League all with the same club. So I think he might be spoken about in 10 years' time, even if it's just as a pub quiz question.
Yeah, on a serious note, like 10 years, fair enough, say that. Will people mention Andy King? Like, I just don't see it. I just think, he's been very loyal, and I've not got a bad word to say about him, but with legend, like...
Well, I think when you think about...
more of legend, doesn't it?
I think it's what you think about a player and what they achieved with a club and what they gave to a club. And I think having spent... I think he's made something like 350 senior appearances as of this week, and I think 130 of them have been with Leicester. And he's been with us through everything, like the whole rise from the depths of League One, winning the Championship, going through the Watford game, all of that, and culminated in winning the Premier League, which I think is a fantastic story and does give him that status within Leicester.
But how much of a role did he play in like the Premier League winning season?
Well, I think that he played in quite a few more games than you'd think. I know he wasn't a key role within the squad, and he was not a player that was going to start a lot of games. But I think he played quite a few of them. But I think many players have spoken about the influence he has off the pitch, which I know that it sounds like a bit of a platitude at times. But
nice word.
Thank you very much. But it is true. I think that you can't. I don't think you can understate it really. I'm trying to find while I talk exactly how many he made in the title winning season, but it wasn't a lot.
You Google that. I'm googling platitude.
Yeah, do.
Well, overall, he's made 379 appearances for Leicester, because I think what the uproar was that his 400th career appearance was actually for Huddersfield Town. The uproar being that should Leicester have been sentimental and brought him back for that, which is a bit weird opinion. But to be fair, Kasper Schmeichel, obviously, if he does stick around, is going to surpass him. He's only 18 behind him, which means he will go into the top 10 at some point next season, I believe. That's if my maths is right, yeah. It's not this season. But I don't know, like I said, I've just gone for a more rounded, like someone who ticks a bit of each box. But yeah.
Okay, so if I give you some names then out of players who I think could be on the list, or in fact players who have been suggested that from where we put it out on Twitter, and you can let me know whether you think just a quick yes or no.
Oh, fun game.
Oh mate, honestly, I'm bringing all the fun with me. Right, Kasper Schmeichel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree, Chris? Ooh, you had to think about that one.
Chris wants to sell a legend. That is naughty.
Yeah. Headline right there. Wes Morgan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that's even a question. I think he goes straight in at winning what he did with us. Jamie Vardy and Andy King, we've already disagreed on. Steve Walsh is on this list. Muzzy, is it?
No. Yeah, well, again, I don't know. It's one of them, like, he is iconic. Iconic, not legendary. There you go.
So more of a cult figure rather than a legend.
I'd say so, yeah.
What's the difference?
Iconic.
I think
You just remember moments of his career, flashes.
Yeah, it's more of a personality thing and a moment thing rather than an actual legend.
I'd say he was a flair player of his generation for at Leicester. Like, you didn't really find like step overs and that, but he sort of bought the sauce.
Sauce.
Yeah, he bought the mayonnaise.
As the kid. Oh Jesus. Right, so then you're going back into the.
Said to a bishop.
I'm just going to move this on as soon as we can. Right, and then you're going back into, when you're not back a few years, the likes of Gary Lineker, in my mind, is certainly a legend.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, can't deny that.
Especially with the fact that he led the consortium that saved us. And then
did you see him play live at all?
Absolute. What,
Jamie, I'm surprised you've not said Arthur Chandler. What is your issue with him?
When
did Lineker retire? Honestly, it must have been. It must have been in the early 90s.
Retire at Leicester, so it don't matter when. You probably remember him more of his Barcelona days and that, don't you?
Well, again, wasn't born when he was playing for Barcelona, but let's just say yes.
Well, you probably were, Jamie. To be fair,
I'm 29 years old. Like, don't let
he left Barcelona 31 years ago, so it's not really not that far away.
Yes, amazingly, my football knowledge wasn't great in the first 3 years of my life.
When Chris and I were born, he was obviously playing for Nagoya Grampus in Japan.
Obviously.
So we didn't get to see his. We literally were not born. So,
which is a real shame for you. But anyway, moving on. I still think he's a legend, regardless of whether I saw him play live or not.
Which you did.
Idiots. Right. Okay. So, and then there was a few suggestions which I'm not certain were serious. Richie Wellens. Thanks, Tom Pawley. That's always a good one. And Alan Young was the other one that we had in. I can't debate that one because I really don't know. Anyway, we'll move on from this one. Graham Smith.
Something topical in terms of iconic. Remember how Paul Gallagher took penalties? He still does, actually.
Yeah, with the face away from the ball, quick march and turn around and sprint.
Yeah, that was a bit of a cult figure at Leicester, wasn't it? I had to give him a bit of a, in terms of penalty taking. His stats must have been half decent, I think.
I think in terms of all of our recent penalty takers, he's the man I'd choose.
Yeah,
maybe Nuge, but I don't know. He'd be the man. Right. So another question that we've had in from Graham Smith, quite short and to the point, Graham, which I appreciate, is Maddison's antics will do.
Oh.
Poor Graham. Right. Right, James Maddison. So for context, Graham is talking about the photos that have come out of England star James Maddison spending Premier League winter break partying in Dubai with pals and stunning model. I'm, of course, reading a Sun headline. I haven't made that one up. Chris, we talked about this off air. What are your thoughts on this? Is he presenting a bad example, or is it a bit of harmless fun?
It's a bit of harmless fun, and I'll give you some stats. We love stats. Let's talk stats.
What stats have you got about him being at the nightclub?
Okay.
How long was he there?
Yeah.
How many drinks per hour?
Well, let's contextualise the article. Whether this is true or not is
contextualised. Amazing.
This is critical.
£55,000 a week he's rumoured to be on. One picture sees him treating himself to an £800 bottle of rosé.
800 bottles.
£800 bottle. Hopefully not 800.
That's heavy.
Yeah, and then it gets better than that.
Oh God! Sorry,
he ordered 4 bottles of £6,750 Dom Perignon champagne. But then it goes on to having more purchases by huge bottles of Grey Goose at the very specific price of £2,708. So my point being, relatively speaking, I don't know what, say he spent... Realistically, they were all chipping in. Half the Premier League was out in Dubai, like Ross Barkley, Tomori, Gray, another Jack
approximately 50% of the league.
But let's just say he spent even, 10 grand on that night out. That's let's go with a fifth of his weekly wage. Say I went down the local pub and spent a fifth of my weekly wage, which I won't disclose, would I be getting on the front of the Loughborough Echo? Because, relatively speaking, it's not that much money to him. And secondly, he's on holiday and he's back in training, today, I think. So I don't see what he's done wrong. I think it's just, this sort of stuff, nonsense, does make headlines.
I mean, yeah, you make a good point. It's not like he's been pictured a la Grealish, like asleep on the floor in Iron Apple, wherever Grealish was, or he's not been getting in trouble with the police. He's literally a young lad on a night out. I mean, should players be drinking? Is that much of a problem whilst they're on the holiday?
Boozy Brits abroad and all that.
That's it. We've got a reputation.
I think Ed wanted to be a bit on fashion at this stage, didn't he?
Oh, no. Hey, it's 2020, mate. They can wear whatever they like. If anyone's seen the pictures of Chilwell and Maddison and even Grealish at times, and Stormzy, if you're that way inclined. Me, I'm not, but they've got an interesting attire on, and some people have ripped into them for that. Personally, I think, when I first saw it on our group chat, I was like, it's a joke, isn't it? It's like a bad 90s, like, disco night.
I think he said Barnes was best dressed, so Jake down top man the day after and actually mirrored his exact outfit.
Oh, yeah.
As I do every day.
Yeah, they have, it's awful look, but you know what? Do what you want. Like, I don't care.
Well, anyway, we'll move on because we've got a couple more questions to get through before we move on and start looking at the Wolves game. So very quickly, Rich Kinnaird, who always sends in a question. Thank you again, Rich. A very simple one. What are your thoughts on Bennett? Very quickly, whichever you would like to take that one.
Wow! I actually forgot we signed him. That's how interested I am in that signing, and that's not even in a joke. You actually did forget we signed him. He'll be a good little squad signing, won't he?
Good little dancer. I think he's all right for what he's. Obviously, he's not going to be starting every week, but we don't want someone to start every week. We want a backup player who, in the very small chance they get called up upon, they can be relied on. And he did well last year for Wolves, playing near enough every week. Got them into Europe, so he can't be that bad. So as long as he's happy with that backup role, then I'm all for it. Absolutely.
A good signing for us, I think, as squad depth goes. Rich, that was a good question. Probably the least divisive one you've suggested in a while. No arguments coming from that one. Sorry to do that to you. We have had lots of questions in on Facebook, but these are all questions that we'd like to put out to everyone else as well, such as the best City goal of all time. We couldn't possibly condense that into a short segment here.
Can I just say quickly which actually made me stand up the most?
Okay.
Physically. The one Vardy against Liverpool.
Yes, the volley, the half volley.
I remember watching that at uni. I was next to Liverpool. Well, he claims to be a Liverpool fan. I was next to, at the time. Yeah, I remember that was I literally stood up out my seat and yelped. That was a lovely goal. But yeah,
it's against Leeds for me. Like, technically, that is a sound strike. That's textbook.
This is that.
volley.
That is the goal that Tom Pike, who suggested the question, has his answer. And I think there'll be a lot of people saying that. But we'll probably put this one out on Twitter and discuss this in the next few weeks, Tom.
I think we're going to do a recreation video.
What one of us?
Yeah.
How long have you got?
Left-footed as well, so.
Oh God, that would take a long time. And
I can't kick it that far with my left foot.
Sort of selling your idea to me now.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think it would be quite funny to at least give it a go. So, Ed, get your boots on. Right, and then one of the other questions that came in were about the best and worst signings since you've supported Leicester. So we'll definitely have a look at that. But any suggestions, please send them in now. And then an all-time Leicester Premier League 11, which is going to be a very tough one to look at. But again, suggestions, answers for all of these, please send them in. And any other questions you do.
That worst signings going to be very hard because it will be literally like, I don't know, what's worse? Somebody who comes in and is useless, or someone who comes in and literally like never makes the grade?
I've got a trivia one for you guys then. We signed 2 Hungarian players, I believe, at the same time.
Yeah.
Can you name them both?
Wasn't one called
Zolt Lacho and Gabor Borri.
Yes.
When Ian Holloway had a
was-
love affair with the Hungary, didn't he? He signed
and I think
whilst he was elsewhere.
I think, was there something as well that they could only play at home or something? Something really strange about their signing.
Remember
Latcho ended
the
up playing
Iranian guy?
Yeah.
Oh, Hossein Baby.
Yeah, needed a guy to help him talk.
Because we thought it was going to be awesome.
He could still
The guy
talk.
help him play by the looks of it.
There was a video of him like tackling Ronaldo at the World Cup or something, and everyone thought it was going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But we've made some really questionable ones. I mean, the famous one is going to be Adi Akinbaye, isn't it? He was truly atrocious. And then you've got the lads who have been injury prone over the years. Like Matt Jones was probably one that you guys don't remember, but he was.
I do remember him.
Really highly rated.
Had him in my annual pre-season little booklet that I had. Just thought I'd let you know that.
He ended up retiring at 23 or something, so he was a bit of a disaster. And Trevor Benjamin, players like that. But
Benjamin, what a unit!
I think we can come up with a top 5 on this one, given a little bit more time. So we will definitely circle back round to this one, Josh. So thank you for sending that one in. So I think it's about time that we have a little look ahead to what is a fairly massive game for Leicester coming up this Friday night. First question is, and this is of course against Wolves. First question for you, Ed, is are you going to be allowed to watch it by Lawrence, seeing as it's on Valentine's Day?
It's a good time for me to jump in and obviously shout Lauren out. She is an avid listener to podcasts, so maybe it's a good time for you, Ed, to maybe ask if you're allowed to watch it live.
Well,
yeah,
she's
do the groundwork.
Well, she's upstairs at the moment because I refuse to be in the room with her while she watches certain programs, weekly episodic television programs at 9 till 10 daily. Other than Saturdays, I've learned. However, we weren't going to go out for a meal because for one reason or another, we're going to stay in. I don't. Well, no, it wasn't actually. It was her suggestion, which is very unlike me. I'm the shrewder of this party, if that's even a word.
I genuinely didn't think this would end up with a detailed itinerary of your plans.
I'm going to do when you get back in.
Well, I'm not going out in the first. I'm staying in all night.
Yeah, how do you see your evening ending?
With 3 points.
Right, we're just going to leave this where it lies. I think everyone else can make their own jokes out of the ingredients that Chris has just provided to you all. Best ones win a prize. Okay,
but yeah, I think I'll twist an arm and I will hopefully get to watch the game.
What?
So...
right, okay. So let's talk about Wolves, shall we? Whilst this is still even remotely
twisting.
Oh.
Yeah. What was the question? what the question.
I mean,
I'm
Chris,
going to be able to watch.
in fact, because Chris wanted to do the original shout out for Lauren, I sort of stole his thunder there. So I think you should do it, Chris.
The question, Ed, is how do you see the game going against Wolverhampton Wanderers on Valentine's Day?
I think it's a big game, and I am a little nervy about this. I always thought that the Chelsea game was going to be tight. However, whenever we're at home, I always sort of back us. So in the end, I was quite disappointed with just a point. But now going away, and Wolves, have improved over the last few months and starting to climb the table a bit. I don't know. I am a bit nervy about it, and I'd probably take a point if you offered it me now. Maybe that's very defeatist, but I don't want to lose, which probably comes as a shock.
No, not necessarily. I mean, would you take a draw if it was offered to you now, Chris, as Ed would?
Yeah, I think it sort of falls into the same category as the Chelsea game for me, in the way that if we draw, then obviously that doesn't mean they've gained any advantage on us. So if anything, it's an advantage for us because games are running out for them to close the gap. So yeah, I think I would take a draw. I think it's going to be a very, very difficult game. I think the way the Wolves play and move teams around and manage to keep possession, I can sort of liken the game to a Liverpool, really. They're very intelligent. They started the season, given how badly they started the season to where they are now and the amount of games they've played, I don't think there's not enough superlatives for me to say about Nuno's job. And with them being at home as well, I just see it being a really tricky game for us to sort of go and break them down. I think it's going to be a really gritty one, where it's not going to be pretty. I think they're going to come out, and it's just whether or not if we concede early or not. Because we've seen in the past that if we do concede early, our heads can drop. And it's those moments of complacency. If we do go through that 15, 20-minute rut, I do see Wolves punishing us. So hopefully not. But I've not felt this worried about a game probably all season, really. I think it's the most difficult game we've had. No, Man City away. But yeah, this in reality is a very tricky game, yeah.
So Wolves are, no pun intended, in the chasing pack of 4 teams behind us from 6th down to 9th, separated by just 2 points. But of course, they are currently 14 points behind us with 13 games left. So in reality, a win for Leicester means that they're pretty much guaranteed to not catch us at that point. It takes something pretty disastrous from us for them to do so.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily Wolves catching us is what I meant. I think it's in terms of dropping, gaining 1 point is better than not gaining any, in terms of like Chelsea or, Sheffield United, Tottenham, Everton, Man U, that pack of teams. Mm. If you look at Sheffield United's upcoming fixtures, then, on paper, they are a threat to the top 4. Of course, we've still 3 games. We played them on the 2nd of May, and that, on paper, we'd have looked at that as like a lovely little game at the start of the season, and that could be huge.
I mean, so they've got some fairly obvious danger men in the likes of Jimenez, but it's Traore who's getting most of the plaudits for something of a breakout season this year, Ed. How concerned are you about Adama Traore?
I'm very concerned. How concerned are you about him?
Extremely. Very good player.
Yeah. Well, he's always been that player who everyone sort of just said he's super fast and he's got potential, but his end ball is a bit cack and he's just not going to make it. But this season he's just like pulled his finger out, hasn't he? And you add his pace and his power, you add a final ball and you become an extremely dangerous player. I read this week that he's been linked with a move back to Barcelona, and whilst I think that's probably unlikely. It shows how he's gone from almost sort of nowhere to someone who was questioned whether he could make it in the Prem to be in link with, going to the biggest clubs in the world. So it's certainly going to be a threat. Also makes me wonder what we're going to do defensively, because obviously we like to push our fullbacks high, and are we going to be able to do that when you've got that much pace going around the back? And are we going to have to change our shape to accommodate that?
Well, yeah, when you got someone lethal like Traore coming in around the back, you need to sort of, neutralise, if you like, the threat. And if that in a defensive shape, I think we do need to play a real flat back five to get as many men in there as possible. Get them behind the ball, and then obviously counter on them. I think Wolves have been found out recently at home. I don't think they're that convincing. Just from memory, the last few games, I think they drew at home to Newcastle. So it is proven that, if you go and do a job on them, you can come out with the rewards. It's just we're not playing vintage football. We're showing glimpses of it. Maybe after this winter break, which obviously both teams have had a very similar amount of time of, it could be a real howitzer of a game, high energy, sort of end-to-end game. For me, it's just whether we concede early. The longer we stay in it, I do see us coming out with a positive result.
Well, do you want to put a prediction on that whilst we're there?
I could literally say any one of three results and have an argument for it. But because I'm going to be optimistic, I see us coming away with a 3-2. Just historically, these fixtures have been high scoring. Like, I remember one iconic Wolves v Leicester fixture was, I think we were 3-0 up at half time and lost 4-3. But did that not happen even more recently as well? They came back from a few goals down again, didn't they? But the one I'm on about was about 20 years ago now, I think. But nonetheless, I see goals. I think a couple of seasons ago, it was like a last-minute winner, weren't it, or something like that? But I think I can see us coming up with a last-minute winner. So I'll go 3-2 Leicester City.
Yes, you're right. They beat us 4-3 last season. I think if you remember, we brought it back to 3-3. We scored in the 87th minute, and then they went down the other end and scored again. And that was really when the nails started to become added to the coffin of Claude Puel's career at Leicester, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been some cracking fixtures across the years. Obviously, the one that you're talking about was the most famous, and one of those days that most Leicester fans can remember where they were when they were watching it back in 2003. But Ed, what do you predict then, seeing this? Say if Leicester do play your favoured shape and with the ideal team, obviously lots of players coming back fit. How do you see it going?
I think we will have a draw. I believe it will be 1-1.
1-1.
Yeah, I think. I wouldn't be surprised if we went ahead and then they came back and pulled them back from the game, to be honest. Would be my prediction.
And would you be happy with that? Would you?
Well, obviously, I'd rather the win, but again, when it's form against the sides at the top of the league has not been great this season. It's got to the point where let's not lose a point or do. And same will go for. Is it Man City after that?
Believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So same for that. Obviously, getting 1 point instead of 3 ain't great. But if we can, navigate this triad of Chelsea, Wolves, Man City, I will see that as a success.
I mean, they do tend to be better statistically away as a team, but I think that, like you said, they sort of recovered a bit, didn't they, from a pretty ropey start to the season. In that they're about mid-table for their home form, much better away. But I think we'll draw as well. I think it'll be a score draw, probably 2-2, something like that, which again, I wouldn't be too disappointed with. I think just avoiding a loss after our last few games, again, it will be big mentally heading into Man City. And then we've got Norwich straight after that as well. So we've got some big fixtures coming up because they're big for different reasons. But we do need to get a bit of momentum heading into that, and then we go on to play Birmingham and Villa. So we need to be on it really. One of the questions is, if we play 4 at the back, which is which we've done most of the season, indeed he's now back fit. He played a full night, I think, after his injury against Chelsea pre-match. Which midfield do you play? Because we haven't seen Dennis Pratt in a little while. And obviously they've got a very strong midfield with the likes of Neves and Moutinho, etc. So who do you guys want to see start?
I play our best team. That is Ndidi, Tielemans and Maddison in whatever their shape they're doing their 3 normally. Like, there's no mucking around. Like, this is a big game against a side that also challenging for Europe this season. Away from home, don't try and get clever. We play our football, and so hopefully we'll get something from it. I like Tielemans in. He offers more creatively than Pratt, and I never felt like when he comes on, he's just sort of super solid at everything rather than being that creative.
Well, you say that, but that ball he played.
One pass.
Cool. I mean, sometimes you need that to unlock a game, and it's you can't. People like Moutinho. That's what his game hinges on. He's a solid midfielder in terms, and Neves as well. They're not flash players. So I think you'd be a bit dismissive of our Belgian compatriot.
Wow, there you go. Maybe dismissed. Yeah, I want Tielemans to play. End of story.
Well, I mean, to play devil's advocate, I'd just say that he's not really been hitting the highs. He's maybe hitting a bit of a lull that he was criticised for at Monaco, and hopefully he is well rested and comes back and really wants to go at Wolves.
And if he's on form and he plays alongside the likes of Maddison, who's hopefully recovered from his hangover, and the other lads, I think we've got a good chance. I think I'd like for us to start thinking more about us rather than the opposition for these games. We're a good side when we play our best, and we need to get that form back, is my take on it. Right, Ed, anything that you'd like to add in? This is always your time to shine.
No, I'm fine and dandy. I appreciated the stick for a light-hearted suggestion to helping us solve our issues out wide, but obviously some people don't have banter.
The results of the poll that you're referring to was fairly unequivocal. I think it was about 90% in favour of Lloyd Dyer in the end, and they are correct.
You nasty folk.
You nasty folk. Right, Chris, I think that, and Ed, thank you very much. I think it's the time now where I hopefully request everyone to rate and subscribe and like our podcast on all major providers, please. It really does help us out. We really do appreciate it. Hopefully we've given some good answers for your questions. Thank you to everyone who sent them in, and sorry if we didn't get a chance to come around to it. We'll be back next week at the usual time, hopefully reviewing another 3 points. So thank you very much for listening.